Welcome back, fellow maidens. Today I am going to be discussing the topic of Marika and Radagon, and how they are one and the same being. I am going to assume that many of you watching know that Marika and Radagon are the same being, and to start this analysis off, we are going to understand Marika and her background. So let's look at some of the races within Elden Ring. Before the Erdtree, there were many races, such as fire giants, dragons, crucible as the primordial form of the Erdtree, misbegotten, nightfolk, Numen, and I'm sure a few more. But what I want to focus on is the Numen race. Regarding the Numen, it says this: the face of the Numen, supposed descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born. The Numen are called Merbito, literally meaning rare person. I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly. Merbito is an ancient Japanese word referring to a supernatural being who comes from afar bringing gifts of wisdom, spiritual knowledge, and happiness. So this does somewhat explain the Numen people within the world of Elden Ring. They come from a place outside the Lands Between, a place known as the Lands of the Numen. The Black Knife assassins who murdered Godwyn the Golden during the Night of the Black Knives were all women, rumoured to be Numen, who had close ties with Queen Marika, as well as citizens of the Eternal City. Now I want to look at stars. We have much to learn about the stars within Elden Ring, but the one I want to focus on today is the ill-omened star, known as Astel. Astel is a malformed star, born in the flightless void far away. It once destroyed an eternal city and took away their sky. A falling star of ill omen, the natural born, the eternal city of Nox. So Astel fell from a void, was sent by the greater will to destroy the eternal city. Long ago, the Nox invoked the ire of the greater will, and were banished deep underground. Now they live under a false night sky, in eternal anticipation of their liege, of the coming age of stars, and their Lord of Night. A weapon we find within the eternal city of Nokron is the Fingerslayer blade, saying this: the hidden treasure of the eternal city of Nokron, a blade said to have been born of a corpse. This blood-drenched fetish is proof of the high treason committed by the eternal city, and symbolises its downfall. Cannot be wielded by those without faith, but it is said to be able to harm the greater will and its vassals. Perhaps this is the reason for their downfall and banishment by the greater will. We also know the Nox are descendants of Numen. It is said that the Black Knife assassins are said to have been descendants of the Eternal City, Nox, and we know that the Black Knife assassins are Numen. So we know that there are links to Numens, Black Knife assassins, the Eternal City of Nokron or Noxtella. This will be relevant later. Now that we have a little knowledge of the past, let's look at Marika. So the reason we looked at the Numen people is because Marika is Numen. Once she became queen, she was granted faith-based powers. She, through the sap of the Erdtree, spread faith throughout the Lands Between, forming churches and communities that believed in the Golden Order. Marika then meets Godfrey and he becomes her consort, becoming and regarded as the first Elden Lord. I won't be discussing Godfrey today, but he is known as the Lord of the Battlefield and has a strong lust for battle. I believe this could be why Marika chose him to be her consort. She made orders to have the fire giants destroyed, as their flame was seen as an enemy to the Erdtree, as it could destroy it, and Godfrey was a suitable candidate to do this. During this time, more wars took place between the dragons and eventually with Liurnians. It was not stated what Marika was doing during this time or where she was, and we will come back to this at a later stage. For now we will discuss Radagon. During the Lucarian War, Radagon is made known by placing himself at the front of the battle lines. Muriel, Pastor of Vows, says this:
Lord Radagon was a great champion, possessed of flowing red locks. He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host. When he met Lady Rennala in battle, He soon repented his territorial aggressions there, and became husband to the Carian queen. However, when Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Rennala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord.
What I want to point out from this is who Muriel called the Great Golden Host. Who is the Great Golden Host? I believe this could be a reference to Marika. So Radagon eventually repented his territorial aggressions, cleansing himself with celestial dew, and swore his love to Rennala. They married and had 3 children. During Radagon's time in the Academy of Raya, he studied glintstone sorcery and taught the students. It was said that, as the husband of Rennala of Lucaria, the red-haired Radagon studied sorcery, and as the husband of Queen Marika, he studied incantations. Another interesting note is the Radagon icon, which says this: "Thus did the hero aspire to be complete." In what way does it mean Radagon wanted to be complete? This leads me to believe that Radagon had a goal. He wanted to master sorcery and incantations, but why? Well, we'll get to this later in the video. So Godfrey lost sight of grace, and was therefore sent away from the lands between. In search of a new consort, Marika and Radagon married, and Radagon became Elden Lord. This confused many, because why would Radagon leave Rennala, whom he loved? After all, Radagon was thought only to be a mere champion, so why would Marika choose him? Radagon and Marika had 2 children, twins, Malenia and Mikola. There is speculation that Melina and Mesmir is also their child, but I won't be discussing that today. If you want to know more about Mesmir, I recommend you watch my video on him. Radagon and Marika's children were both cursed. If we look at the remembrance of Malenia, it says, Mikola and Malenia are both the children of a single god, as they are both Empyreans, but suffered afflictions from birth. So from this we learn that Radagon and Marika were a single god. They were one. Marika, Radagon, Radagon, Marika. But how? In Christianity, we could make a simple theory by drawing a comparison to God in Christian beliefs, who is 1 in 3 beings. They are the same but 3 separate beings, and much like how Marika became a god through the greater will, perhaps she was able to split into 2 beings, or she chose to. A more complex theory would be alchemy. It is thought to believe that Marika and Radagon were inspired by the alchemical concept of the White Queen. The White Queen is often depicted as one half of the rebus, the other half being the Red King, a single being possessing both male and female qualities. We can also see an example of this in Castlevania, when Dracula and his wife were brought back to life but were forced to be contained within the same body. But what does this mean? Where does that fit in? Well, my fellow maidens, let's find out. Descriptions of alchemical process often describe the reactions of sulfur and mercury. The Red King is sulfur, the active, volatile and fiery principle, while the White Queen is mercury, the material, passive and the fixed principle. Mercury has substance, but it has no definitive form of its own. It needs an active principle to shape it. This involves spiritual transformation, the shedding of impurities, the joining of opposites, and the refinement of materials. The end result of this profound transformation varies from author to author, but it could be self-realization, communion with divinity, and fulfillment of purpose. So like the White Queen, Marika is a fixed material for the greater will, but she has bigger desires, and she wants to create more change. And how does she do that? She takes part of herself and creates Radagon. Radagon being the Red King, the sulfur if you will, an active and fiery principle. And I find the word fiery interesting, as this could relate to his hair, something he despised because it reminded him of the fire giants. But how did Marika make Radagon? So if we recall when I discussed the Numen, the eternal city of Nokron, and the connections Marika has to these things, an item we find in the eternal city is mimic tears. The mimic tear requiring a sacrifice of their own hill to summon it, highlighting a symbolic relationship between the summoner and the tear. So we could say that Marika had to sacrifice a part of herself to call upon the mimic tear. From the mimic tear ashes, it says this: mimic tears are the result of an attempt by the eternal city to forge a lord. This implies that someone previously tried to create a lord with a mimic tear. Now, when Marika became goddess, perhaps she had more power to fully create a lord, Radagon, who would eventually become Elden Lord. This can further be concluded by the silver tear description. The silver tear makes a mockery of life, reborn again and again into imitation. Perhaps one day it will be reborn a lord. This really solidifies to me that Marika did use a mimic tear to create Radagon. This could have occurred during the reign of Godfrey. Then, during the Locarian War, Marika, as the Great Golden Host, sent him to fight in the Locarian War. But through an unexpected turn of events, when no side could win the war, Radagon marries Rennala, thus bringing peace. Then when Godfrey was sent away, and Radagon was well versed in sorcery and intelligence, he went back to Marika and they married. Even though they were married, they were still two bodies, and we know this from Melina, who speaks of an echo. Marika's spoken echo.
Spoken echoes of Queen Marika linger here as well, in Marika's own words. O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both, mine other self.
This would have taken place long ago, and we can assume that when Marika said, "Let it be shattered," she could be referring to the shattering of the ring, which in doing so allowed them to merge once more. For example, when we see Marika in the Erd Tree, she changed into Radagon, showing that they had fused and were now one. This could explain why Radagon didn't want the ring to be shattered, as he would then be one with Marika, no longer his own person. Now the question is, what was the reason behind Marika wanting them to merge? So we know the Golden Order, fundamentalism, is a scholarly pursuit combining both intelligence and faith that attempts to interpret the fundamentals of the Golden Order. The Golden Order seal says this: a formless sacred seal depicting the ceremonial observation of order, enhances Golden Order fundamentalist incantations. Fundamentalism is a scholarship in all but name, skills incantations using both intelligence and faith. And interestingly, Marika was granted faith-based powers, and Radagon studied sorcery during his time in the academy, and with sorcery your intelligence scales. So this concludes again with Marika's plan. She pursued faith and intelligence through Radagon. I believe this is her becoming the perfect being. She wanted to become the Golden Order fully. So, as a conclusion, we can see from our discussion, when Marika became a god, she created Radagon by sacrificing part of herself to a mimic tear, thus forming Radagon her fiery half. Radagon married Rennala, had children, and learned sorcery. He left Rennala and married Marika, becoming Elden Lord. They had children, and then Marika shatters the Elden Ring so that Radagon and herself can become one once more. They are now one god, one lord, a perfect whole with both intelligence and faith. So this concludes my theory on Marika and Radagon and how they are one being. If you would like to show some support to my channel, Please subscribe if you want to see more content and like the video. Thank you very much for watching. Farewell.